Okay, another Monday, another weekend of wild college football. I'm joined today by Preston Gant and Jay Smith. Guys, before we start all of this off, y'all know the drill. Got to know where everybody can find all your content. Preston, I'll start with you, then go to Jay. Preston, where can the people find your stuff?
Yeah, y'all can find me on YouTube at The PG Show, Apple, Google, or Spotify, The PG Show. That's all going to be one word. Or you can find me on Twitter at The PG Show _. I try to keep it pretty simple.
Absolutely. Jay, how about yourself? Where can the people find you?
You can find me at Unfair Sports. Just search for me on YouTube. That's where I talk all college football, mainly OU football, and sometimes a little sports in general. And then, of course, you can listen to the podcast, Unfair Sports. We take a pensive approach to the sports conversation. So join me. Appreciate the time again, Ty.
Yes, sir. As always, guys, it's a ton of fun. Thank you, Norwood, for being in here. PG is always communicating with the people. Norwood said Texas is going to beat us 60-10 this week. We're going to talk about that game maybe lightly today, but maybe not. We'll see. Usually these are the recap streams, but we're certainly going to talk about Oklahoma. And actually, what a better time to break into it than the game that the Sooners had this weekend against TCU. And look, I think this was shocking for everybody. Even if you were somebody that picked TCU to win this game, I don't think there were many people out there at all that picked TCU to win this game in the manner they did. So, guys, both of you are Oklahoma fans. One of the reasons why I was so excited today is I want to hear from both of you. What's your take on the current situation going on at Oklahoma right now? What needs to happen for the Sooners to rebound? Where does Oklahoma go from here? But mainly, what was your reaction to this weekend? Jay, I'll start with you and then go to Preston.
So I was there at TCU. I was in Fort Worth. I love their stadium. It's small. It's quaint. It's built. It feels good being there. It doesn't feel like there's a bad seat in the entire place. And I just like the way it's set up. So I'm gonna give them props for at least that, number one. The second thing from that is I just felt like the team just forgot what they were supposed to do. So first 3 weeks of the season, Oklahoma defense was up there. The offense was still figuring themselves out, and everybody talked about that. He's like, Oklahoma's offense isn't what it's used to with Lincoln Riley, etc. But the defense looked so much different. It was like as they were reading the press clippings, Agent K and J was sitting there with their unit and just erasing their memory on how to play defense every time they read themselves in the paper. To the point of coming into this game, no one knew how to communicate with each other. People were out of position. You notice the same thing with the K-State game. TCU has a mobile quarterback who knows how to throw and likes to throw, and it's just everybody was out of place. And then on the offensive side, Dylan Gabriel did miss some passes, but when he did was on target, the receivers weren't catching them. So it's hard to be able to be successful if everybody is just messing up. To me, top down, everybody had an issue in the last 2 weeks. I don't think that it's a time to sound the alarm and say that things are bad. We talked about this pre-production, Ty. I feel like this is a better comparison to the situation that Kirby Smart walked into at Georgia than any of the other first-time coaches. Like there was a big tweet out there talking about Dabo Swinney went like 6-5 or something like that. You had Bob Stoops went 7-5 his first year. Nick Saban went 7-5 his first year. Lost Louisiana with Monroe, and everyone went all over him for that. But I think the Kirby Smart 75's more a better comparison because Kirby took over a team that was a consistent 10-win just about every season under Mark Reich. He just couldn't figure out how to get over the hump and beat the teams that would get him to a national championship. I think with this situation, Venables walks in, consistent 10-win team, and now he's trying to figure out where everybody fits in the set and schemes of his first 3 weeks. It was all athleticism winning those games. On the defensive side, it really wasn't scheme as much. It was just the players just knew how to get there. But I will say this to wrap up. There are lots of elements of Brent Venables in this still. And I'm going to do a video talking about what's going right and what's going wrong. But the one thing I saw that Brent Venables is all over, Oklahoma is 4th in the country in tackles for loss, average about 9 a game. That's what Brent Venables is known for. Tackles for losses and sacks. That's what his defenses are known for. They're still there. They got 4 in this game against TCU. The problem is on third down, we just like letting people get 3rd and 16 every other play. Once they buckle down this properly and communicate right, I think they'll be all right. But right now, it's not Chicken Little. The sky's not falling. But we still have to get a lot of things going properly if we want to execute and actually finish the year good. So that's my take on it.
I love the Kirby Smart one because, I've seen so many times people saying, oh, well, I think that this is analogous to Nick Saban or this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, I understand the logic behind your point, but Saban took over a team that had infractions on it that was not a good team the year before. And Nick Saban, guys, there are stories of him having to kick players off the team mid-game for eating chicken wings during halftime. Not like the what he inherited was not, good. But I love the Mark Richt one because that is a perfect example of somebody inheriting a program that wasn't in a bad position. You can't say that Georgia was in a phenomenal position, but they weren't in a bad position, and it takes time. This is why over the summer, I kind of would bash heads with Chris and JP. Someone I'd say, I need to see what Venables looks like as a head coach. I know he's a great defensive coordinator. That's amazing. But inevitably, you're going to hit snags that you don't have to face as a defensive coordinator. You have to make decisions you don't have to do, and it's a learning experience. So if you want to say OU's in trouble for this season, I think a conversation is there to be had. If you want to say that the Sooners are in trouble long-term, way too early. Absolutely way too early. And hey, I've been consistent. You can ask Chris. Chris, what do I say about Steve Sarkisian even to this day when people are saying, oh, they need to move off Sark? Way too early. Yeah. Way too early. Let him do his thing. I'm going to keep it 100% and consistent. Now, Preston, I said I'd go to you after Jay. I want to hear from you about this TCU game.
Before you jump in, Preston, I got one thing to say, and I think this adds to what you said. I went and rewatched the game, and they talked about Brent Venables not needing a get-back guy. You talked about you want to see what he looks like as head coach. That fire and intensity he had as defensive coordinator. We used him running out there and acting up. Well, they said him as, he doesn't need a big get back anymore. He's doing a really good job. Literally the next play, there was a flag for the team stepping out too far. Brent Venables at the 20-yard right there in the play. They're like, we're warning you to get back. He's a get back guy. We need that intensity again. What do you think?
Yeah, no, that would be awesome. Let me tell you something that I love about Brent Venables that I saw in this game. The defense wasn't playing well, and he stood up like a leader. He got all the defensive guys together, got in the middle of the circle, and tried to get them in the right spot. I saw that on TV, and I was just like, okay, we're going in the right direction, regardless of the outcome of this game. So that made me feel a little better. Ultimately, I think the fans need to pump the brakes. We were talking about it before this. Like, the chemistry is not there for this team, right? You bring in 40 new guys. You have guys that were here during the Grinch and Riley system, some that were here even during the Stoops system, right? You're going to have to weed out all of these bad habits, right? You're changing the culture. Culture doesn't change overnight. This takes time. Being able to communicate on the field takes chemistry. They don't have the chemistry. They're not going to be able to communicate well. We're seeing that, right? As the season goes on, I expect this team to get better. It's going to look a little rough, but that's how things are when you have to have a guy that comes in and changes the culture. You heard of guys last year during the OSU game sitting on the sidelines with their phones, right? Lincoln Riley was not implementing that tough, gritty, defense or strength and conditioning programs that OU is known for. And ultimately, it shows on the field. They get down, they start letting up a bunch of yards, and you see these guys almost act like they don't want to play anymore. And so I expect to see Venables and Roof and those guys probably scale the defense down a little bit. And then I would expect to see the defense be able to gel and mesh a little bit more. Now, do we win a bunch of games scaling down the defense a little bit? I don't know. Ultimately, I think if you're Oklahoma, you have to have better tackling. I think someone said that they'd missed like 20 total tackles against TCU. That's unacceptable. That is a basic fundamental of football. You should be able to get that right? If you miss the coverages, you miss the schemes, that's fine. You should be able to at least make the tackle. So that's one of the things that I think we're going to see get better, just like we had the first 3 games of the season as the season progresses. But, I'm only 25 years old, so this is probably, outside of our playoff losses, the worst loss I've ever seen watching Oklahoma. And this is like probably the roughest I've ever seen it. And that's saying a lot. I'm spoiled. I have been living in the golden age of Oklahoma for as long as I've been watching football. And people my age are having to endure this rough style of ball. It's okay, though. All fan bases go through it. Alabama went through it right before they got good, right? It happens. It's okay. We'll be fine. OU fans don't need to overreact.
Yeah. Chris, I got to hear from you, man. Give it to me. Tell me what you're thinking.
Man, look, it's 2 games. It's 2 games. It's way too early to start all the talk about Brent Venables as a head coach. It's way too early to start talking about mailing it in for the season. You see Mysterious on here talking about 3 or 4 losses and this and that, and then everybody's a backseat coach, right? It's okay. It's okay. You see a lot of, even though there's a lot of bad, there's still a lot of good in some places, especially when guys are assignment sound, fundamentally sound, and doing their job. PG, hell, they talked about it today. As I heard Teddy say it all over the place today. The franchise everywhere. The defense was scaled down at TCU. It was. They were playing base cover 3. If you go back and watch some of the film, they were in like base packages. You just had guys out there who just didn't know the assignments, or some people were talking about maybe there's just some guys didn't know the plays as far as from play to play or whatnot. Some guys just didn't, not that they didn't know the play or what they were going in there with, but I'm just saying, like, going to the next play or whatnot, you're getting stops on 1st and 2nd down, and then 3rd down, boom, right over your head, right for a 60-yarder. I mean, guys are wide open, but it was scaled down. But I'm for as bad as they've looked in these past 2 weeks, there's still a chance. Whole thing is look, we've been here before. 2020, we lost to Iowa State, K-State, and guess what? We won the Texas game, and that galvanized our season. That really got us back to a level of football that we were fine with, and then we were one of the hottest teams to finish that year. So, with that being said, I'm looking for the same this game. Are we going to go out there and show effort? Are we going to go out there or are we just going to go out there and roll over? Everybody's already saying it. Look, I get it. He played a great first quarter against Alabama. My whole thing is this. I'm not scared of Quinn Ewers. I'm not really scared of Texas at all. The whole thing is OU beats OU. And that's how I feel every time that they lose. It's something that OU is doing. If you look at some of the touchdowns, now, Ty, you look at some of the touchdowns that happened. You got 60-yard passes, guys just busted coverage, right? And then you have one guy who's basically, if he stays in his gap, if he stays in his assignment, you probably don't have a 60-yard run by Duggan. I mean, it's all there if you just look at it.
So he got beat. What you're telling me is he was there and he messed up and he got beat.
Oh no, I'm not saying he was there. He was nowhere there. He went the wrong way.
So he got beat.
He went the wrong way. I mean, if
that's where I made that face, man. I hear you. OU had a lot of self-sustained issues, and yeah. I completely agree with that.
I don't know. I mean, I'm kind of confused as to how do you fix it, really? Because regardless if you roll out there with Bevel, everybody's talking about Bevel. Bevel looks like, I don't know. But at the same time, if you go out there with Dylan Gabriel, from everything I've heard, he wanted to go back into the game. Well, obviously, you can't do that in light of everything that's happened. They're not going to do that. He's still a concussion protocol. I don't know. But even at the chip that he was playing up to the injury, I mean, is his performance going to be good enough to get us over the hump? So, I mean, there's a lot of question marks on this team. But at the same time, I like I said, Joel Embiid, I'm going to trust the process. And that's all that you can do at this point.
Yeah, 100%. Look, I think, and you've heard me say this so many times, Chris, with all things, the truth lies somewhere in the middle, right? Is there cause for concern for Oklahoma this season? I think there's certainly a conversation to be had about that issue. Yeah. Sure. Is there cause for concern long-term? Way too early, and we have got to keep repeating that point, because this doesn't need to be a situation where people are calling for Brent Venables' jobs. Brent Venable, he's coming into a situation where these aren't his guys, right? He's having to implement his style way too soon to be talking about or even thinking about long-term trouble. But Chris, here is where I have to disagree with you on this. And I hear you. Oklahoma made a lot of uncharacteristic mistakes, right? That much is true. Busted coverages, not having an understanding. I am a little bit of a different mindset than you when you say they did simplify it and they didn't know the defense. To me, that's even more problematic, that if you ran your base defense and your guys don't know your base defense, that's problematic on coaching. I'm going to keep it a buck there. If they don't know base defense and we're in week 5, that's not good.
My only counter to that, and these two guys right here can attest to it, is a simple fact of the guy that the person who caused the busted coverage does not need to be out there. I'm sorry. I don't like going over people's jobs, but that guy doesn't need to be out there. You've seen him for four or so years now do the same thing over and over and over again. And under 2 staffs.
Fair, but I think here's kind of where I disagree with you, saying that OU beat OU. Right now, the number 4 defense in the nation in total defense, they've given up 1,100 yards total all season. Total, all season.
Yeah.
OU in 2 games has given up 1,200 yards. That's not OU beating OU, right? Like there's certainly plays that contribute to that, but there are some issues they got to work through. Look, are the Oklahoma Sooners in trouble? They got some things they got to work through, but they have to be given time. They have got to be given time. I think the thing that's most confusing to me is the use of 3-man fronts. And I'm not saying I'm a coach, but the most confusing play in that whole game was when TCU had a 3rd and 1 and Oklahoma lined up with 3 down linemen and no linebackers on the line of scrimmage. Max Duggan looked around, audibled to a run, and they just walked to the first down.
Yeah.
Said, okay, cool. That stuff like that is where I was just like, that just, I don't get it. Obviously, someone much smarter at defense sees something I don't. So I'm sure Venables would say, oh, well, we saw this, this, and this, which made us call this. And we'd all sit here and go, oh, well, that makes complete sense. That's 1,000% logical. You're right. But yeah, it's, and I think, Kirby, you're 100% right. You're 100% right on this. He's building a new culture. He has got to have at least a minimum of a season to do it. So that's why I won't say outright the Sooners are in trouble, but I do think it's fair if someone is like, oh, I'm concerned this season. Yeah. Cool. Because look, y'all are spoiled just like Bama fans are spoiled. We're not.
Sooner fans are so spoiled.
Right? We're not used to losing. So yes, you have some level of concern that might not be the status quo this year, but no worry about anything moving forward for the Sooners. And as always, Chris, I think the truth is in the middle, where I say there are other problems and you say that the problems are self-inflicted. The truth is probably right in the middle, where I'm seeing things that are happening and not accounting for some internal errors. And so I'm super interested. I think the last point I'll do before I pass it off, and the last point I'll have on Oklahoma, this weekend is going to be big for me. And the reason is I don't care who wins the game. It's how. How do you show up? Because this is as big as it gets. And not just for Oklahoma. I mean, a rivalry of this magnitude for any institution in the nation. I mean, you don't play games bigger than this, right?
Yeah.
You just don't. You got to come out with the fire here. And I'm super, super stoked to see Brent Venables go against Steve Sarkisian from a schematic standpoint. That's going to be so much fun. But I'll pass it to y'all for some final closing words, and then we'll move towards this injury at Alabama and how it could affect them going forward.
Yeah, I'll give a kind of a parting thought on it, and everybody, of course, got the great points, and I love the chatter on comments. Thank you all so much. The thing on the 4-man front, the only thing I can say with the 4-man front is if you're playing against a team that runs, which is what Texas is going to be, it's your best bet to do that, and then leverage your cheetah and basically have just a middle linebacker. The only issue I have outside of that is that with this 3-3-5 setup, we've seen the success happen at Clemson. We've seen Venables win with this when you have the right guys and the right size. And they have big dudes that can run the line, and they have big dudes that can play on the edge. But if they're not communicating with each other so that they're going to the right spots regardless, a 3-man or a 4-man front don't matter. our problem has been every single time outside of the pressure. It's been the secondary just not get, or the linebackers not getting to the spots you need to get to stop these third and longs. The defensive line is doing their job, getting you a third and long. What are you doing to help them on a third and long? That's where all of this comes down to. So to me, it's just revamping those at secondary. And I think there's one thing that I think the secondary needs to get much better at, and it's looking back at the ball, because every team is getting smart. Most teams are smart. They understand those corners don't ever look back. Just launch it. It's pass interference every time.
That hit him with the back shoulder. Make
every
him
time.
Come back to the football, and you're going to draw that flag. They do it against
every
Bama
time,
all
just,
the time. I know.
Just jump into it because it works.
I know.
So basically, and that's a Brent Venables defense. I mean, that's a defense like you gotten a lot of concepts from Saban. He got some back when they were really successful on defense. All those concepts are showing, and you got to get those corners to turn their heads around, because that was the one thing I'll give mad props to. I'll give props to Alex Grinch for, is that he always preached turnover. If you're paying attention to the ball, there was about 4 interceptions in that game that I was like, if you just turned your around, you would have caught that pass. They don't do that. They watch the player and they don't pay attention to they can't do both. It feels like the secondary can't multitask, and we've got to get better at that.
Chris, what you thinking? PG, go ahead, take it.
Yeah, one of my final thoughts is we've talked about the 3-3-5 defense for Venables, and I just don't understand it here, because I don't feel like we have the personnel to run this. And you guys might correct me on this, but I mean, Isaiah Coe is really your only nose tackle on this team, and he can't play every snap. And so
Jeffrey Johnson is too, from Tulane. I'm just saying there.
Yeah,
he's had moments. And Laulu had a couple
him.
moments, but it's not what we thought it was going to be when they get transferred here.
Yeah, I don't know. It doesn't make sense. I really hope he doesn't run it for a while, because it's obviously not working, and we just don't have the personnel for it. So that would probably be my only thought. I feel like if you could clean that up, and then if you could clean up the penalties, which you guys talked about. I felt like the offensive line played well on Tuesday up until the point where they got hurt. So if you can clean up those penalties that you've kind of been seeing all season on the offensive line and on the defensive side of the ball, and then maybe switch to a 4-man front, I think you see a lot better of a team than we've seen the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, your thoughts?
Man, I just want to see max effort, man. Just see effort and see guys playing fundamentally sound football. One of the things, to go to Jay's point, you could see it in the game an awful lot, even when Broyles did have I say it's his fault with the busted coverage, but obviously, there's working parts of that defense, right? But at the same time, that secondary, their eyes are in the backfield a little bit too much. And I get it. You got to keep your head on the swivel and all the rest of that stuff. But not when they're running freaking 4 verticals, at least that's the look that they're giving.
And you're single high safety.
Yeah. They're sprinting you out and they're running that. So, man, you just need really good linebacker play. You're going to have to, because you already know, you should expect that they are going to mimic what K-State did to you. They're going to run the whole row cat. They're going to run that with Roshan Johnson and Bijan Robinson. You can't have arm tackles, or Bijan is going to bust off 60 or 70 yards. You got to be fundamentally sound, and you got to want to put you got to hit people. You got to hit him. Tackle. Like I said, as much bad as there still is some good. That's not even being optimistic. That's just being real. This team is not like we said, Ty. This past weekend. This team is not a good team, but they're still not a bad team. They're still somewhere in between, but they got a lot of improvement to make now and between now and the rest of the season.
Well, if I may. And I'm not going to disagree with you so much, but it's not a disagreement, but this is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I was wrong, right? And even you're right. I didn't say that OU was going to be a playoff team, right? We talked about that. You asked me if I thought Sooners would make playoffs. I said, no, I don't see playoffs year one. I think they can be one of the teams competing for the Big 12 championship, being in that contention. I didn't see playoffs. I thought they'd be closer. I thought they'd be better. So you people may have had that expectation of where Oklahoma was. I was wrong. And look, I'm gonna stand 10 toes because it is what it is, right? I'm not. It's way too much. I make too many videos for me to go and figure out which ones I need to delete. So my receipts are up there, so I gotta own what I say all the time. But yeah, a few comments before we go. Bombs asks, "Thank you for being in here. Great, great to see you again, man. Hope you're doing well. Is recruiting impacted for Oklahoma by all of this?"
No,
in
it
a
helps.
way,
I'll be-
Bombs. It could be. It certainly could be. I think any team that goes into slides of just kind of down performances, you have to wonder. But there is a flip side to this. And I think both PG and Jay are going to hit on the flip side, which is there's a path to playing time, right? And this is still a staff where when we look at what they've done, look, 2 games is what they've lost. But this staff does have extensive history of being good and developing with a Todd Bates, with a
Right.
Brent Venables. Levy has done great things at multiple different stops. So while it could, I'm certainly not going to be this person to sit here and say, no, there's no way it will, because we know what recruiting is. It's fickle. It's
Yeah.
fickle. That's the game. I don't know that it will as much as other institutions. That I think is where OU is unique in this. Go ahead, Jay.
I'll say that on this, and sorry to make you go short on that. It's when it comes to the recruiting piece, I get everybody's fear that, recruits are going to say, I don't want to be a part of this. Just as Ken mentioned, Texas has these low records and they always get these top 5 classes. Miami's doing it right now. Notre Dame had a lot of issues and their class is still pretty solid. We got a lot of players they think is going to flip, but they're still highly ranked. Recruits are looking at this. They're probably licking their chomps, rubbing their hands like, ooh, I'm about to go start. Mainly because Oklahoma puts guys in the NFL. That's the first thing to remember. If a recruit's looking at this and saying, oh, well, they're losing, what's going to happen? Oh, wait a minute. They've still put guys in the NFL. Even with the historically bad defense they've had over the last 7 years, guys were still going to the league, and a lot of them are still playing right now. So I don't think that really affects recruiting like that. I think it's when it's a lot of internal issues that causes recruits to change their mind. A lot like Wisconsin right now, they just fired their head coach. All the recruits are saying we're still coming because they're like, we like the other guy that's taking this place right now. We're probably going to still show up. So I don't think that that's the reason to be cause for concern for recruits, because teams lose. Teams are going to have bad moments. We've seen Alabama have some moments even with Nick Saban. He's still reeled in these top classes. Same thing with Clemson. It happens. All it is about developing your talent and making them go better. And I think that that's something to be more focused on. And a lot of these recruits know. Somebody put in the comments about Ted Roof. I did not realize that Ted Roof has been a defensive coordinator for 6 teams for the last 6 years. Take that with whatever you want to take with it. That's a solid point. I get why he was an analyst at Clemson. I don't know if Venables is giving him a lot more leeway when it comes to it, if he's being more of a CEO than being a defensive coordinator himself, but
I have no
that's
idea
something to think about.
I
I haven't heard or seen anything as far as what that dynamic looks like. That's probably the question I'm asking. Is Ted Roof really the one in charge? Is it Venables feeding it to him? What does that dynamic look like? Because teams in 6 years and every team he's been to has not looked very good. Does concern me in some capacities.
Yeah, I've heard a lot about Ted Roof calling the plays. Now, I don't know if that's 100% true, but I have heard that he is calling some of those plays on the defensive side of the ball. I think there's probably going to be a hard conversation between Venables and Roof to potentially go back to an analyst spot here at Oklahoma. And if you're Oklahoma, why can't you do what Ohio State did and just go pick up a good defensive coordinator from somewhere? Go pick up somebody from like Illinois or James Madison or somebody that's putting up out of top defense. You have the money. You can pay for it. Why not do it? That's what all the elite programs do.
Yeah. Yeah, Jay says, think this is an OU channel now. No, absolutely not, man. It's just whenever you have a performance like that, it's something that has to be talked about, and you kind of have to talk about the cause and effects. But we certainly have more on the docket for this evening, and I think this is a great opportunity for us to get into the next topic on the docket. Alabama versus Arkansas. Look, I was excited for this because Bama's passing offense has been the one area for the Crimson Tide where you look at it and you're like, that's the only question you have. Offensive line, can it be consistent? And can the passing game be consistent? And what's sad about this is that right when we're seeing Alabama's passing offense really kind of start showing signs of, okay, we're figuring it out. We're establishing the hierarchy. Bryce Young goes down with injury. Now, here's the good news from what I know. It's looking like it's a shoulder sprain. I have no idea how long, the timetable, the severity, nothing. So I'm not going to speak to any of that outside of all I know is it's a shoulder sprain, and we are definitely happy that that it's nothing more serious, because my goodness gracious, that guy right there, we're going to need him later on in the year. No doubt about it. But the question is, if Jalen Milroe is the guy moving forward, should Alabama feel confident? I'm of the mindset of yes, because Alabama is a top 10 rush attack in the nation right now. Guys, they're averaging over 7 yards per carry, and they're starting to get into form right now with Jameer and Jace. And now you throw in Milroe. Did y'all watch what he did to that Arkansas defense on that 77-yard run? The guy's got an athletic ability that is uncanny.
And what was Saban's famous line in that game?
What was it?
Someone...
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah, we threw the ball on 2nd and 1 or 1st and 1 from the goal line. We throw the ball and Nick Saban, run the effing ball. Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Bill O'Brien.
But the way teams are going to have to go about defending Alabama is going to be totally different with Jalen Milroe in. So there's absolutely a path to success. And remember, everybody, go back and watch that spring game. Jalen Milroe was going from his first progression to his second progression. If it wasn't there, he might tuck and run. But he was actually going from one side of the field to the other. I'm not saying he's a complete package in the passing game. I'm not saying he's Bryce passing. Bryce is special when it comes to passing, like genuinely rarefied air in his ability. Jalen, though, has got all the ability to be a dangerous quarterback in this offense. But you know what I'm super interested in, guys? How is Bill O'Brien going to make the adjustments? That's the question. So, Alabama versus Arkansas, what were we thinking? We see Jimmy says Arkansas defense is worse than Oklahoma's. It is. They actually rank 112th in the nation. Oklahoma ranks 109th in the nation. So they're not a very good defense. That pass defense is all-time bad for Arkansas right now, which is really unfortunate because I must admit, I root for Pittman. I like him.
Me too.
I like him.
But he's from Oklahoma, so in Grove, Oklahoma. Shout out to the G's up there. Definitely, I have an affinity for him. But yeah, they're looking awful right now.
Yeah, I like what Jason Ader and Alpha Dog said. I hope Bryce is back for Tennessee, and if I'm an Alabama fan, I would hope so too, because that Tennessee team is scary, and I don't think Milroe is quite good enough to get it done versus Tennessee. I think going to Knoxville, which I would assume is probably going to be a night game, probably going to be game day. It's going to be an atmosphere that I think you're going to want to have the best player on your team there for. But A&M, it doesn't matter. Milroe's going to run all over him. It'll be fine.
Leslie made a good point there too, right there. It's nobody paid attention to A&M last year, and then that happened. I don't think that's going to be that much of a concern, but at the same time, this is probably the one game Jimbo Fisher actually prepares for. It's probably the only game that he cares about is playing against Alabama. The rest of them, he's just kind of like, throw darts on the board. That'll pick what plays we're going to run over the next 3 hours.
You can make an argument it's the only game Saban cares about this year.
Well, this year, I think he just wants to stick it to his guy, but nah.
Saban looks at every single one of these games and meticulously imagines tearing these teams apart. Saban is different.
He's a different breed. He's a different breed of human being in general, the way he works.
Yes, but Ty, there is a small part of Saban down here that just goes, it's all about Jimbo right now. It's all about Jimbo.
Alpha, I'll get to Tennessee here in a little bit because I want to talk about that as well. I actually do have a point on that. I do want to let Chris go before, though. Chris, what was your thought watching Alabama play Arkansas? Because they hit a little bit of a snag when Bryce went down naturally, right? Like your team has to respond. What were you thinking?
It was a game of two halves, to be honest with you, because one half, that first half, y'all looked like y'all were about to just run off with the game, destroy them. you finally got the what you've been asking for this entire season was that vertical game, right? You got to see a lot of that in its glory. Second half of the game was just honestly just about, hey, we're better than you. We know we let you back in the game, but we're about to destroy you. So my whole thing is Bryce Young was on point. Receivers were catching. Receivers were doing exactly what you and Jance have been saying all along. Like, hey, if you just do this right here, we'll be fine. But the vertical game looked fine. Passing game looked fine. Running game, you guys exploited them on the edge. You were able to really hit those edges and then just take off with any running back that you had back there. So it was a good thing to see. So it was about a complete first half that Bama's probably played all season. Second half of the game, I mean, you saw Milroe go in there, and Milroe, I'm going to be real with you. I was more impressed with him throwing than I was with him running, to be honest with you, because some of those passes were on the point. Yes, some of those passes were on the point. He was accurate. He didn't look like he was timid or scared to throw the ball. So I was definitely, and I was happy with his pocket presence as well. I mean, obviously he can still improve, but I mean, let's be real. The guy hasn't played a single snap of football, real football, outside of the spring games in like 2 or 3 years. So if you want to think about it, he's just knocking off the ring rust, right? So I think to your point, it will be interesting going forward how if you get a full 1-game sample of or multiple game sample of Milroe. Are we going to see Bill O'Brien come out there and do things that we haven't seen all year with speed options, different things like that? You get what I'm saying? Or is your offensive line good enough? Is he going to change up some of the things that he's been doing? I'm with the Alpha or whoever made that comment about Tennessee. I don't see how Tennessee can stop them because at the end of the day, Will Anderson is still on the other side of the ball. Dallas Turner is still on the other side of the ball. And Hendon Hooker is going to have to make plays with them in his face all game. So if they come out there and have a performance like they had against Texas, but it looks like that's kind of past them now. They're playing like they're pissed off about something. And so as good as Tennessee's offense has been, you still got to think about it. I mean, outside of Florida and Pitt, they haven't really, hasn't been like just, oh my gosh, we've been going up against great defenses. So that's a chess match as well. But with that being said, I think Milroe's legs, and I think even his arm, I think he can get the job done in Tennessee.
Yeah, I think Milroe is definitely serviceable for Alabama, and he's definitely capable of putting it together to be able to start for however long Bryce Young needs. Because if you guys remember coming out of high school, like there was a lot of talk about him, especially, potentially Texas wanting him. He was extremely accurate in high school, and he can make plays with his feet. So I'm not surprised at all that this man can throw the ball. I mean, in high school, he was doing it. And the fact that he can make plays makes him a true dual threat quarterback on his feet.
I was going to say, I'll jump in here real quick. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you go now. But I got a point that I think you guys will definitely get where I'm going with. And Ty, you probably will enjoy this one.
So my point before Jay goes with Bill Rowe is this right here. If it all boils down to Bill O'Brien. If Bill O'Brien comes out there and asks him to do things that we're like, hey, Bryce is not, I don't necessarily say he's faster than him because Milroe looks like he can run, right? But
Milroe might be the fastest player on the team.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, and Milroe looks a little bigger than Bryce, so I feel like he can
Milroe's about
hit.
6'2".
But
I mean, he's
With that being said, are you going to ask him to come out there and do things that you did not ask Bryce to do, right? Or are you going to come out there and kind of keep it in the same continuity? Maybe you can sprinkle some of those different things in, those elements, the run element, the QB run, all the rest of that stuff, maybe some design runs for him as well. But at the same time, you're going to come out there, not keep it vanilla, but you're going to get him in a rhythm, get him some quick passes going, get him some different things, some screens or whatnot. That way he can kind of get himself acclimated in the game. If you're going to do that, then Alabama will be just fine for however long that Bryce is going to be out.
Yeah. Jay,
so Yeah, so looking at Milroe, I watched a little bit of him. I didn't get to watch a lot, but what little bit I saw, especially in the limited capacity, he really got to even pass or in theory play because of the injury. If he plays the Tennessee game, it'll be just like 2016. That was when Tennessee was ranked number 9 in the country. Jalen Hurts was a freshman, and he went out there, he ate them alive. Mainly because that's my other team. I'm a Vols fan as well. I'm a big Vols fan as well as a Sooner. That's my SEC team. The defense isn't there. The defense isn't ready to be able to stop this type of offense that Alabama has. The running game is too good. And if you got a quarterback that can scramble like this, literally just go playbook from whenever you played against Tennessee in 16 with Jalen Hurts. Just do that. And I promise you'll be fine. Jalen Hurts was SEC, was it offensive player of the year that year?
Freshman
and he barely, freshman of the year, he barely threw the ball for the most part. He had moments when he needed to, and he had some good games in throwing, but for the most part, in those critical games in Tennessee, 172 yards passing, 132 yards rushing. We just saw Milroe can dip. Just play it like that. And if Bill O'Brien is smart, or honestly, if Saban just yells at him and says, just run the flicking ball, they'll be just fine against my Vols. Our defense isn't there. The offense, though, will give Bama fit. So it won't be 49 to 10. It'll probably be both teams scoring potentially in the 40s. With Will Anderson being so good, Josh Heupel is going to be smart enough to actually scheme to where as soon as he's getting there, Hendon Hooker's either getting rid of it or he's scrambling. So overall, it's going to be a fun game to watch at night in Knoxville, but Alabama's done it before. I don't have any faith with anybody beating Alabama until they actually physically beat Alabama.
So here's the interesting thing. We talk about Tennessee's offense, and offensively, Tennessee's got it from an offensive standpoint. I mean, they're a dangerous team. That is a team where if you're an Alabama fan and you're wondering, where do I need to watch this Alabama defense, really start going into some different bag of tricks based on the type of offense they're going to be facing. I'm pointing you towards a Tennessee. I can't wait to watch the Mississippi State game. I always look for it ever since Mike Leach got to the SEC. I love watching Mississippi State play because you know what they're going to do offensively. Mm-hmm. But Tennessee comes in with the 95th total defense in the nation. This is where I worry about Tennessee because Alabama's defense is a top 10 defense in the nation right now. And not even that. When you look, this Bama defense is playing really complete right now. Really complete football. It's not like it's just a vaunted run stuffing defense, but if you can pass it on them, you have your opportunities. Don't get me wrong. They run a lot of man. And whenever you play up against a defense that runs a lot of man, inevitably you're going to have your opportunity to hit some big shots because it's one-on-ones, right? That's just the nature of playing man coverage. But the corners, ever since that competition has kind of died down, they're playing stingy football. Kool-Aid and Terrion Arnold. Terrion Arnold is playing out of his mind right now. That guy is unbelievable. He's so good. They're 21st against the run. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I got you, but we saw what happened with Kool-Aid against Texas. And yes, Tennessee's receiver set.
But you also have to understand what Texas did in order to do that. We played Kool-Aid on one side of the field by himself, and Steve Sarkisian almost every time did an orbit motion or some sort of motion to account for the safety and get him to move. Steve Sarkisian did a lot to try and isolate Kool-Aid in one-on-one settings. And even then, I didn't think Kool-Aid was the biggest issue. Now, he didn't have a great game, but he was also asked to cover Xavier Worthy and a 6'5" tight end who college football might not know a whole lot about Jatavian Sanders now. That's going to change. That dude is a straight up problem. And God's mercy on y'all for trying to guard him this weekend. Anybody?
Come on, Ty. Come on,
Chris.
I mean, you're right. You're right. The Sooners are gonna have issues trying to stop him, man.
Tight end who moves like that's a nightmare for anybody.
That is a nightmare for any defense. I mean, or just massive 6'7" tight end right now that I'm trying to figure out how you get a person that big.
DeAndre Washington. And so you have Washington at Georgia. You have the other tight end they just got in this year. Is it Oscar Delp? And then you have Brock.
I think
Bowers.
that's Oh God.
Goodness gracious. Hey, Hank, y'all know about him. But I don't think college football as a whole knows about him. Some people in this chat know about him because y'all are college football fanatics. You're an Oklahoma fan. You're going to know Texas football. It's just like me knowing Auburn or Tennessee, or it is what it is.
Auburn looks good, by the way.
Okay. So Leslie asks, is JoJo 100%? Hey, if he cleans up the drops, he could be big. Now, I'm not going to give away too much because stay tuned for tomorrow. The video is supposed to come out today. I just did not have the time to finish it up, finish the thumbnail. I have a video talking about if Jalen Milroe is the guy, he could be a really great addition, and he could be someone that Alabama's offense can flourish with. I think some people might expect Alabama's offense to take a step back. Texas A&M and Bama beating should not be inflated. Roger, I don't know where anybody's inflating it though. Yeah, I don't because I agree with you. They weren't as good as advertised. That's not to say I disagree with you, Roger. I do agree with you. They were not as good as advertised. And it's a good win in the sense of its SEC win, but it's nothing more than that. I do agree with you there. But look, moving forward, this Bama offense, if they can get the ball out quickly, they can be dangerous, even with Jalen Milroe, because you're going to see more safeties slide down into the box to account for Jalen Milroe. At the point they do that, the passing game is now opening up more. Can't wait to see that. Now, I do want to stay in the SEC for this next game because a lot of people have been talking about this. Georgia versus Missouri.
Oh, God.
Georgia versus Missouri. Guys, Missouri takes Georgia the distance. Now, the big bad dogs in the end pull out a victory. What are your thoughts on Georgia after this game? I will quickly give mine. I think that through the past few weeks, there's certainly been areas where teams have shown, hey, this is how you can go about attacking Georgia. But am I saying it's time to panic on the dogs? No, because everybody in college football has had their close games. Certainly Georgia's afforded theirs. Now, that being said, you should beat up on Missouri. And in no way am I saying, oh, absolved, don't worry. Missouri showed some ways to attack the dogs. Kent State showed some ways to attack the dogs.
I was about to say, yeah, you got to put you got to throw Kent State into the game.
Sure.
Kent State.
Sure, but in the Kent State game, it lasted for all of a quarter, a half, and then Georgia ran off with it. The Missouri one, though, was much more telling. What's y'all's thoughts on Georgia?
So let me jump in this one first. Let's talk about the first. Of course, we talk about Kent State because they played Oklahoma, and they had 2 quarters where they just kept going up the field and just couldn't capitalize and do it. Missouri had it. It just felt like Missouri just did not. Missouri don't know how to close. They're not closers. Coffee's for closers only. They don't get coffee just because they can't close the deal. But overall, it looked like Georgia's offense just forgot how to play. Like, what was Stetson Bennett doing? Like, I figured he's been the Heisman conversation. He's been out there putting up numbers, and I didn't see any numbers from him. I think Georgia will be fine. It's just it feels like this was one of those weeks where they were ignoring who they're playing in front of them. Who do they have next coming up? Who's on Georgia's schedule for next week? They have Auburn. They ignored Missouri at Missouri for Auburn. It feels like they just overlooked the actual opponent in front of them, and they were just paying attention to who's coming up next week. But I think that they'll be fine. I mean, their defense has shown that they can shut people out when they need to, or they can clamp down when they need to. But this is 2 weeks in a row they gave up 22 points to offenses they shouldn't have gave up 22 points for. We'll see what Auburn looks like because we know Auburn is a dumpster fire right now. If they give up 20-something points to Auburn, then I would say there may be some concerns. There's something about them that people are figuring out. But that's what I need to see first.
Chris, I know you're dying to go on this. I know you're dying to go. Talk to me about Georgia.
How should I say this? Georgia is about as inconsistent as you could be as the best team in college football, right? I mean, there is some inconsistencies because, hey, when they're great, they're great. But as the kids would say, when they're mid, they're kind of mid, right? Because I mean, I'm just being real. Like, I don't like to critique teams, especially with the mess that's going on with us right now. But at the same time, when you look at Stetson Bennett, it's just kind of weird. Like something was off about the offense. About the offense, I don't know if maybe they went in there thinking, okay, well they'll just roll over and we can just run what we've been running these past few weeks, control stuff. East-West offense. Their offense has been about as East-West as it can be. I mean, they made vertical throws, different things like that. They went vertical, but at the same time, for the most part, I mean, hell, when you're running, I mean, don't get me wrong, Bowers is that guy, but when you're running end rounds with Bowers, jet sweeps and stuff, I mean, it's just kind of to the point where you're like, hey, we're just that much better than you. We can block and, I mean, we can run with our tight ends and all of that. I just feel like is this going to be something that lingers throughout the season? I mean, I still don't know who's actually going to beat them outside of Alabama, but I'm just saying, is this something that lingers throughout the season where it becomes a problem for them down the line against somebody? Because I don't necessarily know what their schedule looks like the rest of the way, but I mean, I do feel like there's some teams on their schedule that, you know, the Tennessees, all the rest of that stuff, right, that could get the job done. I mean, they could last longer than what Missouri did as far as just trying to, you know, just kind of push the ball and just survive. But I don't know. That's kind of my question right now. Does this linger? Do you see more of this? Down the line for Georgia?
Yeah, I think that a lot of people are making a good point. Their offense runs so much through Brock Bowers. People are saying if you can limit Bowers, Georgia's pedestrian offense. The hard part is limiting Bowers is much easier said than done. Yeah. But to y'all's point, you're right. Now, that being said, they still have Washington. That tight end room they have is a problem from top to bottom. It's problematic as can be. PG, what's your thoughts on Georgia? Oh, you're muted.
Don't worry about it. Georgia's fine. That's it.
Simple and to the point. Yeah, look, largely I agree. People put film on how to attack the dogs, but hey, you got to get it. And look, I do think Nigel makes a good point. Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State. I'm interested in Kentucky, Nigel, because Kentucky is just such an interesting team to me. And that's not to question Kentucky. It's just very, very interested into what they're going to look like. But point absolutely well received about Florida, Tennessee, Mississippi State. Jay, talk to me about the teams just mentioned, and can they test Georgia?
So as much as we were trying to give was Anthony Richardson Heisman nods after his couple of games this year.
We is a big 2-letter word.
Yeah. Well, we're not French. My bad. I'm not French either, so I'm not going to say we anymore. But people were giving him a lot of nods towards the Heisman, and I think that he's a special talent. And he can do some things. I don't think Georgia will have a problem with them. I do see Tennessee giving them issues just because of how vertical that offense is and how fast they go. This is probably Heupel's most special team that he could have. And as we talked about them playing against Alabama, I don't think that Tennessee will be able to beat Alabama just because I just think that defense is just too strong and that offense is so much better. But I do see that Georgia will have a problem because I think that that Tennessee's defense can limit Stetson Bennett. If they can, like you said, stopping Brock Bowers is dang near hard unless you're keeping Stetson Bennett not very comfortable. And it looks like that's kind of what's been happening. 5 catches in this game. That's not something that I would have expected out of a guy as great as Bowers is. That also could mean that people are starting to figure out ways to make Stetson Bennett uncomfortable. And by making him uncomfortable, it makes it tough. So I do think that going from Florida to a high-octane offense like Tennessee to another high-octane offense like Mississippi State, one of those three is an L. I'm not sure which one. I'm thinking it's going to be in the middle with Tennessee because Florida will still beat you up. Irregardless of how bad they play, they still got talent. They've got talent every year, and they got some dogs. It's just they're right now they're yipping instead of they're more puppies than they are big dogs. But whenever they're actually playing, it just gets you beat up. That's why that SEC schedule, and Saban talks about this all the time, it's so grueling, and why he always have a team like Austin Peay right there before playing against Auburn because you know that you're going to get your butt kicked every single week, and you kind of need a cupcake before you go against your rival. I totally respect it because it makes sense. That 3-game stretch, though, yeah, that's going to be a tough one for Georgia. And I think that out of one of those 3, there will be a loss. And if the loss comes from Tennessee, they may lose to Kentucky as well. If the loss comes from Mississippi State, they'll probably end up beating Kentucky.
Now, I do have to say this. DK, SEC is far from trash. You have how many national champions since 2010?
My God.
2013?
Right. Yeah, that's something we
Get
don't.
up off the jock tie. Stop riding the jock, man.
I mean, he's not wrong though.
How many national champions the Big 12 have since that time period?
DK, keep it coming, DK. Come on. Keep it coming, DK.
Well, no, I'm just look, the greatest minds in football look to the SEC for their talent, right? Like, so it's not overrated. And talking about the refs, I don't know if I can find it, DK. I'm going to try to, because I think it'd be very interesting to read. But there was an article published last year, the year before, that took like a 3-year analysis of penalty calls. And Alabama was an absolute statistical anomaly in how few holding calls opponents get when they play Alabama. Like, it was so far outside the norm. They were like, either A, all of a sudden opponents' offensive lines just never hold against Alabama, or B, they aren't getting called at the same rate. So am I saying Bama never gets big calls? Of course I'm not saying that. Every team in history has gotten a big call that's helped them in a game. That's the nature of football. But is it as bad as people perpetuate? No, it's certainly not. It's certainly not to that degree. If not, people are. Jay had to leave at 6:30. Chris, I need one more topic, man. One more topic we got to talk about.
What's that?
Texas A&M.
Oh, I mean, come on, man. It was the perfect recipe. They've been flirting with disaster over there in with Mississippi State for the longest, man. Mississippi State just playing a really good game, and they were able to sustain drives and do all the rest of the things that they haven't been able to do in the past. Ty, I've said it to you so many times before. Hopefully you remember. Back in the day, a few years ago, whenever when Kiffin and Leach came into the SEC, what did I say? It's going to be really fun in a few years when they get players that fit their system and do what they do well, because they're going to make some noise in the SEC. You see Ole Miss go and beat Kentucky this weekend. Now you see A&M dropping a game to Mississippi State. It's to be expected, because you know why? Even though they're still, in my opinion, middle of the road kind of programs in the SEC, they're still good enough to beat you on any given Saturday. Texas A&M dropping is just and was this more about Texas A&M or Mississippi State? It's hard to say, because Texas A&M, they had some drops. They had some plays that you were just like, man, if you have that play right there, you probably win this game. One play that I can point out is the touchdown throw the drop touchdown by Evan Stewart. I mean, it's just Texas A&M doing Texas A&M things. I don't know. I mean, all right. It's kind of crazy, because you're it's hard to take enjoyment in Texas A&M or Texas losing when I know that my team is not playing up to the level that we want them to play. But it's just wild. But with Texas A&M, to answer the question directly, did not see them losing that game. I thought that they would win, but I mean, it's kind of typical, right? I mean, I don't necessarily know if Jansen's right where they're going to go 6-6, but possibly 8-4, 7-5. I mean, what are your thoughts about it?
So look, we walked into this game last year and everybody thought Bama was going to beat Texas A&M by a whole lot. And we know what happened. Alabama played one of the worst games I've seen a Nick Saban coach team play, right? And the other game I'll say was against Texas, where every other time we turned around, we were giving Texas free yards, free first downs, Will Anderson lining up offsides, just uncharacteristic mental mistakes, right? So these things do happen. And so I never want to be the guy that's just like, hey, we're going to beat A&M. We're going to beat this team handily, because we've seen it before and it just doesn't work out that way. But when I look at Texas A&M this year, they have problems that I didn't see last year, right? Like, I don't think the defense is as good as it was last year. I thought the Texas A&M defense was better last year. They have got some injuries on the defensive front they have to deal with. But Chris, for the life of me, I can't figure out what their identity is on offense. Like I don't know.
And that's
I have no idea.
And that's a point of emphasis right now that I was about to just harp on. Dylan Gabriel and Max Johnson have a common problem, in my opinion. They're pretty indecisive. Like Max Johnson kind of holds the ball a little bit too long for me. And I think that's going to be a problem in this game, because what about Max Johnson has changed since he left LSU? So the question is that if you don't think that that Saban has been watching the LSU tape and now watching this tape going forward, they're going to say there's still no difference. There's a lot of the same similarities, a lot of the same tendencies. We're going to attack him. And I think that you're going to be successful this game. I think that this is going to be a game that a lot of Bama players have even marked on, have circled. I think it's going to be a game that a lot of them want to go and win, just not only for bragging rights, but just to kick Texas A&M's teeth down their throat. So Max Johnson is going to have to play the game of his life to beat Alabama. I mean, I'm just going to be real with you. That's what it's going to boil down to. Is he going to come out there and be able to score and be able to keep drives alive and keep that defense on the field and keep the offense off the field, no matter who's the quarterback for Bama? Is he going to be able to do that?
Yeah, whenever I look at Jimbo, the thing I just do not get is you're an offensive-minded guy. How is it that that's the one area of your team that is just not there? And it's not a one-off. It's certainly not a one-off, right? You look at it, last year I felt the same way, the year before that. Yeah. I don't know if I could say I felt the same way the year before that, because that was the COVID year, right? And like that was actually, if we look at it, that as hard as it is for me to say, because Chris, I wouldn't quantify myself as a sunshine pumper. I think I'm realistic, but I always try and give people the optimistic side of things, right? Like, this is the reality of your situation, but here's where there might be a silver lining. I don't like being the negative person, but right now it's looking like the one anomaly is the one good, like just really good season Jimbo had with Texas A&M, the COVID year. It's looking like that's the anomaly, as opposed to every other season is the anomaly, and that's the base result with Jimbo. I don't understand, and I've said this before, I'm not going to harp on it. When they extended him, I just had no idea what the standard of acceptability is at Texas A&M. I have no idea what's considered acceptable, what results are considered acceptable, what you have to do to maintain a job there. I have no clue, because there is no discernible difference. Actually, you know what? The sad part is there is a discernible difference between what Kevin Sumlin did and what Jimbo did. Kevin Sumlin never lost to a group of 5 team. Kevin Sumlin has more ranked wins and more road ranked wins. That's the reality of this situation. So as much as I want this game to be much more dramatic, much more intrigue around it, I think you're right. Alabama players have circled this game. They feel slighted. They feel very slighted. And they want to go make a statement, and they realize there's an opportunity to make a statement in front of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things, man. It's just one of those things. I don't know. Jimbo Fisher can't get on the hump. His offense has been underwhelming. And I mean, even with there were bright spots with the Kellen in the Kellen Mond era, right? But at the same time, the 2020 season was an anomaly for a lot of different teams, because you had all those damn super seniors. You're still saying, hell, you just dealt with a super senior 2 weeks ago at K-State with Adrian Martinez. I mean, these guys are coming in, and they're mature, super mature players. Same thing with Nebraska. Nebraska probably would have a hell of a team if they were able to go back in time and at least go back to last year, where they benefited from a lot of those super seniors who got that COVID year, right? So the whole thing with Fisher, I mean, I think a point that a lot of people haven't really thought of is that Jimbo Fisher, especially this year, I mean, even some of the years past, they're a really young team, because you're paying all this money, NIL, doing all the rest of this stuff, and even before NIL, you're still paying and all that, right? You're doing all these things. It's kind of like Texas A&M is the Kentucky basketball of college football. Does that make sense? Just without the wins, though.
Okay. I was about to say explain.
Just without the wins. So I mean, you're getting these crazy talented freshman classes, and you've even seen with Calipari, sometimes it just doesn't pan out.
Yeah, and we heard Paul Feinbaum talk about he's heard from boosters that they would be willing to move on Jimbo's contract if this year doesn't pan out. You want to know why I'm kind of calling cap on that? I'm calling their bluff. You destabilize your entire recruiting class you just signed and the one you hope to sign this year. Yeah, you can get rid of Jimbo, which might fix some problems that you have coaching, whatever, but you've now destabilized something for years on end. And whenever you look at it right now, I just don't know who you get if you're Texas A&M. I never understood the extension for Jimbo, but at the end of the day, look, if you're Jimbo Fisher, make your money. Sign the document, make all the money you possibly can. Good for you. Absolutely good for you.
He called his number and told them to put it on the paper, and he signed. And the whole thing is that he got them. They didn't get him. He got them. They did not get him.
Yeah. We'll go to some comments right now. We got a Texas fan in here. Vincent saying Jalen Milroe is a dog. Man, he is. I really am excited to what he's going to be able to do. Very excited to his ceiling. I'm just very interested in what Bill O'Brien's going to do play calling for.
Hey, just jumping down here, man. Here's my thoughts. Okay, in a perfect world, this is what would have happened. All right, Wisconsin. All right, in a perfect world, Spencer Rattler is the quarterback for Wisconsin. My uncle and I were talking about this the other day, and we said, you know why Spencer's struggling over there, and he's going to have to come back for yet another year? No offensive line whatsoever to give him time to make the throws, make the reads. He's playing in what he's calling a pro-style offense and all the rest of that. That's great. Why wouldn't you go and do that at Wisconsin? You're going to have a great running back core. You're going to have a damn good offensive line. You're going to play in a pro style. You'll have decent to good wide receivers that you can get the ball to, and you're going to be able to command that offense. Even though Spencer Rattler hasn't been just amazing, he's still better than the quarterback there at Wisconsin right now, just off of talent alone. Maybe not just knowing the system, but just talent-wise, he's way better than him. You can go there and you can be in those games, kind of not the barn burners, but pretty much like, hey, it's a grinded out game, and you can play consistent football. In a perfect world, I think that would have won. I think that would have probably bought Chris one more year, and then two, that would have helped Spencer out a lot. But that's just my perfect scenario or my what ifs, right? I think that was the move that you probably should have made if you were a Spencer Rattler. And I mean, now you look at it and you think about it, hell, Caleb Williams would have probably saved his job as well, because Caleb Williams would have did wonders too. But I'm just saying, I mean, with Wisconsin, I think a lot of us outside of the fandom now, I think a lot of us were just wondering when was this actually going to happen, because I don't know.
Yeah, Wisconsin, that was just wild to me. Especially you look at some of the college football programs that wish they were in their situation where you might not be where you want to go, but you're much closer than a lot of other teams. And him getting fired was just wild. We've got some people asking for some Pac-12 talk. I think that's a great place to end it. Mm-hmm. Chris, my favorite team in the Pac-12 took a loss this week. And really one of my favorite teams in the nation. Not that I'm a fan of this team. I'm just simply saying for the 2022 season, I've had so much fun watching Washington. I have had so much fun watching the Huskies. Michael Penix Jr. has been electric. I mean, genuinely, everybody in chat, if you have not watched Penix Jr. this year, you're doing yourself a disservice. They are so much fun. The Pac-12 is chaotic as can be, but there's beauty in the chaos, right? Like that's the one thing I'm just really intrigued about with the Pac-12 is the beauty in the chaos.
For the first time, I sat there outside of when OU went to play against when OU went to UCLA back in 2019. Yeah, Jalen year. I watched that game, and for the first time in so long, watching Chip Kelly coach UCLA, I said, "Wow, that's the Chip Kelly of the past. That's the Chip Kelly that we know." But I mean, it all helps when you do have another super senior at quarterback. But
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what are you thinking in the pack as a whole? Because Oregon has responded after their loss to Georgia. Now, I'm not saying I think Oregon's a world beater. Please do not get me misunderstood when I say that, but they've only had their one loss. Utah's an interesting team. Kyle Whittingham always has the Utes in a really good position. They're always disciplined. They're always a threat to make a move in the Pac-12. USC is making some moves right now. They beat up on Arizona State this past weekend, but look, USC, they're undefeated to this point. I'm interested to see how they continue going down the stretch, but they're putting it together right now. What are your thoughts on the Pac-12 as a whole?
Definitely top heavy, but you have some pretty good teams in the tops. I'm not going to even just kind of crap on USC. Hey, we already know the situation. We already said that he was going to have success there. It's the Pac-12. We already knew he was going to be able to work magic there. Caleb Williams is, I mean, honestly, to be totally honest with you, Ty, if the polls were in right now, I think Caleb Williams may be the Heisman. He may win the Heisman. I really do.
CJ Stroud, and they've been phenomenal.
I would say Caleb, because I know the eyes haven't been there, but CJ Stroud really hasn't. The way they've done it has looked totally different, and in my opinion, I think that.
I think Penix Jr. should be, look, I'm not too early to say anybody should be crowned. I've been so surprised Penix Jr. hasn't gotten more Heisman hype given the numbers he's put up.
Ty, I'm going to tell you now, I'm going to reserve my thoughts about the Pac-12 until October 15th when USC goes to Utah. I got to see that. I got to see that game right there before I can really make a judgment. I mean, I think it's been really good football thus far. I still think Oregon is a fraud. I still think that Washington is good. Can they bounce back from this, and can they go on, or is this going to be it? Because I think Penix is this his last year?
No, he's young.
Well, hell, he should get the COVID year, and he should get the medical red shirt year. He should get a medical red shirt.
Let me double check, but I was looking at that the other day, and he's got time. He's younger than most people think.
And Alpha, we know that is way too early for Heisman talk, but at the same time, like I said, Caleb Williams
we're just having fun
right now.
Yeah, we're just having fun. Pack not in contention for playoffs, maybe USC. Look, I talked about this at the beginning of the year. Carl, I know you commented on the video, so I'm interested in hearing your take now that we're a few weeks in. I didn't think USC was a playoff team this year. I just thought that there was so much they had to go through. And while Lincoln Riley would be able to do some positive for them in the short term, there was still a lot on the back end he needed to do. But that being said, they've been off to a great start. Caleb Williams is playing really well. They have so much talent on offense. Defensively, very interested in how they keep growing. But, one of the biggest moves I thought in the transfer portal, everybody points to the quarterbacks, and deservedly so, especially in football. Eric Gentry from Arizona State to USC, one of my favorite moves in the entirety of the transfer portal. That guy has the ability to play edge. He's got the ability to play inside linebacker. So, look, I'm ultimately, for the end of this season, I want to see who the number one team in the pack is. Because right now, even though USC is undefeated and on paper you would put them as number one, I don't know who I have as the number one team in the pack. I just am so intrigued to hear from like Carl or Aiden to say where you think the pack is right now. But I'm just intrigued as a whole because I keep saying it. There's beauty in the chaos. There's absolutely beauty in the chaos here. It says Gentry's a freak. I know. DK in here saying, keep ignoring my comments. Your team time is coming. Hey, man, it happens. What are you going to do? I've gotten to watch my team win more national championships in my short life than most people see in their entire. So
DK, he
very
was just
grateful.
crying the other day about how bad Alabama had been playing, but they're winning. They're winning ugly, but they're winning. Don't let the man fool y'all. Don't let this man fool y'all.
I'm grateful. Well, hey, I can call out whenever things aren't going according to plan. That's fair. But it's one of those things, man. And realistically, you and I have talked about this. DK says UCLA is the best team in the pack unless you don't know football, hey, maybe I don't. But I don't know if UCLA is the best team in the pack. They're playing really well right now. They're certainly playing really well right now. But I don't know if UCLA is the best team in the pack because I don't know if they're better than that Utah team. Utah took that loss to Florida, but goodness gracious, if they run the ball instead of throw the ball when they have the victory in grasp, maybe we're looking at a different situation with Utah right now, but we can never count out Kyle Whittingham and the discipline he instills in those teams. That's unbelievable. Always love watching Kyle Whittingham. Frightening says, oh man, I'm late. Hey man, it is what it is. It is what it is. Glad you're in here though. Aiden says USC tops Utah. I'm a Utah freshman. Stats show that if the winner of USC and Utah remain undefeated in the pack, they'll make. No. And look, I think that there is a path to the playoffs for the pack, but I didn't predict it, and I didn't see it. There's a path; it could happen. I just didn't see it. Sven disagrees with the UCLA best team. Yeah, Sven, I'm with you. I think they're impressive. Chip Kelly, to Chris's point, has done a great job. I don't know if I can put them number one though.
You got to keep it going. You're not no. They have not played good football. They played a great game against Washington, but they haven't played good football up to that point. It's I wouldn't say lackluster, but it hasn't been like just earth shattering, right? USC looks like they're the best team in Cali. Looks like they're the best team in the Pac-12, but at the same time, going to Utah is going to be tough, and that's going to be a different game. If they struggle at Corvallis, they're definitely going to struggle at Utah. So we'll see.
Yeah. I would probably put Utah or USC right now as the best team in the pack. But I don't know. I'm very interested in seeing those would be the two I would put up there is Utah and USC. That would be my two for the Pac-12. Frightening. Hey man, I'm trying to understand football. Every day I try and get a little bit more knowledge of this game. It is what it is. But yeah, Chris, that's about it from me, man. I want to let you get your closing thoughts. Let the people know where they can go and find you.
All right, guys. Again, okay, two things, right? Two players, right? Aaron Rodgers, he said RELAX. Relax. It's going to be okay. Oh, you're going to turn this around at some point. At some point, you're going to see some magic, all right? The sooner magic we're stirring it up in the pot. We're going to pour it out. It's about to get on. I got us beating Texas pretty handily this weekend. I think this is the game.
Interesting.
This is the game. I think this is the game. Quote me. All right. Now, with that being said, you guys can find me at the Horns Down Podcast, at Chris with a K on Twitter. Find us on Twitter at the Horns Down Pod. Shout out to my guy Seth Oliveris, but definitely find us there. Also, tomorrow, Ty, you may want to watch this one. It's about to get a little bit chippy in here tomorrow. At Nino's Corner, at Fanatic Perspective, Stephen and Nick, myself and Seth, we will be hosting our annual, pretty much our annual joint podcast. So Horns Down Podcast meets Nino's Corner and Fanatic Perspective. And it's going to be a little bit chippy in there because I know Steven's going to try to bait us in. But y'all definitely check that out. It's going to be at 7 p.m. tomorrow, Central Standard Time. Definitely check us out. It's going to be fun. Come in there. Comments are going to be going crazy. Ty, you know how crazy it gets in there. So with that being said, I'm sorry for the ignorance that you will be hearing from the Texas fans. But at the same time, I'm there. I'll educate them. I'll do my best. Boomer Sooner.
Man, that's going to be so much fun. And guys, genuinely, whether you're an Oklahoma fan, whether you're a Texas fan, that stream with Chris, Steven, Nino, I mean, it is so much fun. If you're an Oklahoma fan, guys like Texas Homer, Nino's Sports Corner, Fanatic Perspective, The Lando Show, Nash, they do fantastic stuff. If you're a Texas fan, Indy Sooner, PG Show, Horns Down Podcast. They all do great stuff, right? I mean, there's so many great content creators in the college football sphere right now. And one of the things I like to do on my channel is it's called Around the Table Sports for a reason, right? That's why I try and get people from all different teams coming on, because that's the point of all this. So we can talk and be fans all together. But thank you everybody for being in here. Daniel says, hook 'em as we're getting out of here to the Boomer. OU and Texas fans chirping, but hey, what a better way to start off the Red River Rivalry week. Everybody, y'all go enjoy your Monday Night Football. I got to go eat dinner with the fiance. Chris, thank you as always for being here, and we'll see you on Friday for the preview live stream. Oh, goodness gracious, what's about to happen?
OU by 40, y'all. We out of here. Boomer.
Oh, no. Oh, are you before you go, are you making like another revolutionary video?
Oh, I don't know yet. I don't know yet. Look, something's gonna happen. I've been planning. I've been scheming for something, but we just gotta go out there and win first. We gotta go out there and win. You can't talk noise and lose. So we're gonna go out there and win. But yeah, you by 40, okay?
Now, what if I help them put together a revolutionary style video if y'all lose?
Oh, Ty, we would be beefing. That's what would happen. We would have beef. We would have beef. We would have beef.
Well, we might
matter
be beefing.
Matter of fact, we won't have beef on the streets. I'll do you one better. I'll sue you, right? I'll send you I'll petition the court. I got some people. Don't worry about it. But yeah, hey, you about 40 this weekend. I'm telling you, it's gonna happen. You heard it here first. Monday morning, OU. This is the score. I have it.
Guys, Chris is trolling. Like, he's being halfway serious, but he's having fun. Chris is just he's halfway being serious. He wants Oklahoma to win, but he's having fun.
OU by 40. That's all I got to say. I'm out.
Yeah. You got them all up in arms, man. Yeah. That's what Chris does, man. But we'll see y'all on Friday. Y'all enjoy y'all's evening. Be sure to check out that live stream tomorrow. It's going to be amazing. We'll see y'all next time. That's it. See ya.